Hi, good morning. Thank you for coming to Confer 2022. My name is Aiko Yamashita. I'm Principal Data Scientist and the lead of the ESG Data Task Force at the DMV. And today I'm going to talk to you about AI and sustainability and how these two maybe seemingly unrelated topics converge in a very vast speed. So I think everyone can relate to this picture already 2 years ago, a bit more than 2 years ago. And I think the COVID crisis has shown how interconnected everything is. And this is exactly what ESG is all about. And it was actually quite amazing because during that crisis that followed the lockdown from COVID, big investors realized that the companies that actually managed to navigate this intricate landscape were those who actually were best prepared or best rigged for handling all aspects of ESG, environment, society, and governance. And therefore, they believe that if you don't build these issues into your analysis, then you will actually basically won't make it in the future. So today I'm going to talk to you a bit about these three concepts embodied in this definition: environment, society, and governance. And we're going to start with environment. So there is a global momentum and pressure from regulators. And believe me, for those who have seen Exit and The Wolf of Wall Street, I mean, that's just one small fraction of what financial industry is about. And I will have to say, in Norway, or in the Nordics, financial institutions are amongst the most regulated ones. And DNB also has to answer not only to Finanstilsynet in Norway, but also has to respond to the EU. And we have seen the results from the climate meeting in Glasgow. We know about the Paris Agreement, the European Green Deal, which is pushed by the European Union, basically is using financial institutions as the ship, the flagship, or the instrument in order to mobilize economical funds towards decarbonizing our society. So a lot is happening from regulator side, but actually I think we are feeling most of the pressure from investors, stakeholders, and civil society. And we see that steadily in how the wealth transfer, intergenerational transfer is occurring, with more than 30 trillion US dollars, which are going from baby boomers generation to Gen X and the millennials. And that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, because basically the mindset of the stakeholders and also the investors is changing dramatically, and people are realizing that climate and our future are things that we need to take a grip on. And therefore we're having these expectations and pressure from investors in order to report on our goals and have ambitious goals when it comes to sustainability. And therefore DNB launched last year the strategy for sustainability development. I'm sorry. And yes, we do commit to 2050 net zero emissions. But this is something that kind of is standard. But I think DNB has a quite ambitious goal in terms of financing and facilitating up to 1,500 billion Norwegian kroners just by 2030. And I think that's a quite ambitious jump to move towards. Besides also decarbonizing different sectors for which we have balance sheet for. But what is DNB's stake on ESG or take? And I think it's basically both of them. And that is basically strategy. Of course, we need to be able to report our progress and monitor our strategy. And please remember, DNB is a bit like a big boat or a jumbo plane that is kind of trying to navigate this landscape. We need better products that can support the decarbonization, the green transition. At the same time, we need to respond to regulators, national and international. And at the same time, we need to take into account new types of risk that did not exist in the financial world. And those are kind of basically responding to natural risks and transition risks related to climate. And DMV realized that ESG cannot wait, and that there was a essential need for creating future-proof solutions. And this is why this year we established a special data task force in order to develop what we call the ESG Data Hub. And here I can give you a bit of a glance, it's a conceptual glance of the architecture, because data is fundamental and it lies at the center of anything that we need to do in order to facilitate this green transition. We have, of course, financial institutions struggle with data quality, but in many cases, we don't even have the data in our systems. So we need to think big, and we need to think in terms of developing data products that can centralize and integrate data from different sources, both internal and external, and to make sense of those in a structured and future-proofed way. So basically, we are leveraging our capabilities in the cloud in order to create what we call the ESG Data Hub, where we have data loaders that can actually be adjusted to different data sources. We use our cloud capability in terms of the data lake. And what we are doing now is developing different service data through data pipelines. And those are actually registered under a catalog, and they should be discoverable, and we should have lineage, proper lineage documentation for each of the service data. In terms of the distribution and operationalization, we are designing the hub in a way that can respond to needs for data sharing, so direct data sharing to different data sources and tables, but also insights automation, because we realized from day one that a lot of the reporting that's done in the financial sector is actually done manually. And that represents a big risk, operational risk in terms of reproducibility and in terms of accountability. Applications, we realized that we need to actually integrate and develop new applications that cater to the particular needs for the different ESG use cases. And finally, we also need to have dashboards, and those are kind of integrated into the service data. And some of the use cases I already kind of mentioned briefly are reporting, but not only that, we want to score in a better way our customers, our providers, our transactions, our portfolio. We want to be able to monitor our progress. And last but not least, we want to create a value for customers. So examples such as identifying the possibilities for energy efficiency improvement in the real estate market. That could be a really good thing, and try to help our customers to identify these places where they can actually save money and they can get back their investment, and actually provide them with good credit conditions so that they are able to do that. This is something that we need data and analytics to do so. And finally, of course, risk. And this is an extremely interesting problem, because we're thinking normally these risks models operate in a year term, and now we need to work with uncertainties in a longer period of time. At the same time, we need to also be able to manipulate our portfolio in a stepwise format. So from a sort of modeling perspective, this is also extremely challenging, and the fact that we need to understand what kind of coefficients different data points or variables may have to play into determining the financial risk based on, so for example, climate data. It's an extremely challenging but interesting problem. So when we talk about ESG data, it sounds a bit like abstract. So I'm going to give you a bit of sort of feeling what kind of data we are handling in our ESG data hub. So first of all, we do have physical climate risk data. This is a picture from Gjedrum, the clay fall accident. But also it could be biodiversity and pollution data. We're working a lot with emissions data because this is something that we need to report on, how much emission we are financing. But not the least, equality or diversity data is also a very important component from the S perspective in ESG. Finally, energy data or sector-specific data, because we do have a portfolio which which has different sector components, everything from shipping to technology to industry. So we need sector-specific data in order to be able to, for example, see how our portfolio needs to look gradually in order to, for example, reach net zero emissions. We're using this data to create better risk models to calculate something that is called green asset ratio, which falls under the EU taxonomy regulation. Basically says how much green activity you are supporting or you're lending money to. And last but not least, we of course want to use all this data in order to identify possibilities for offering better green products and services. And this is our task force. I always like to put faces to initiatives and activities and projects because this makes it real. And this is a team of very diverse background, both cultural and sort of educational and industry-wise. So I think this is a very strong component in our team working towards ESG. Let's go to governance. And this is where AI comes into, because I think we're using a lot of top-of-class technologies in our ESG data hub. It's not only just transfer technology, but we are actively using high-end technology and analytics. And this is kind of the picture I often have when I think about AI. So I think of AI, data, and technology as this extremely powerful, fast, Formula One racing car. And sometimes I feel like humanity is kind of scrambling around and, working full speed, and we're kind of headed to the future. And within this picture, I often wonder who is sitting in the driver's chair. And this is a question that I think everyone who's working with AI and data and technology needs to ask him or herself more often, because there are risks in the usage of data and AI, and there are risks that are so pervasive that we cannot longer ignore and just think that this is something that it will have minor consequences. At least for us, we identify several major risks with the usage of data and AI. One is unintended effects, and this is basically if we lack control and understanding of the mechanisms and behavior of AI solutions. Reputational damage and loss of market share from losing our customers' trust. I think that's an extremely important thing for us. Non-adoption by customers. So a product that is used in an AI solution can basically fail miserably due to the lack, for example, of transparency. And this is a very good example from the solution they tried to roll out in UDI. And that was a fast-track solution for citizenship applications. And this fast-track solution was based on automated algorithmic solution. And the applicant had the choice to take the fast track, which will allow him or her to have this processed faster and get their citizenship response. And let me be clear here, those were for the extremely simple and easy cases that you will highly likely be approved. And yet the people felt that it was too much at stake. And they felt that they couldn't trust the algorithmic processing. So So this product or this solution failed miserably because basically the people did not trust the solution. The stakes were too high, so it was not adopted by the user. Boycott from civil society, or basically having our legitimacy undermined, I think this is a very clear risk that you may have in the usage of AI and data. And of course, misuse, criminal or otherwise, of data and AI technologies. This is becoming more and more pervasive as we have all these extremely sophisticated algorithms for fake content, for example. Because, at the end of the day, the algorithms can be racist, and this is a fact that we need to undertake. They might be stupid many times, and I think that we should not idolatrize technology. We should take technology for what it is, and it is a product of our work, our biases, and our perceptions, and they can end up very stupid. I would like to go back to the term of individual intelligence and collective stupidity. And I think, for example, if we don't have different perspectives working together into a solution, we can end up in very stupid solutions. And last but not least, they can be extremely resource consuming. And this is something that has become even more evident in the last decade. We need to be extremely conscious about what kind of technologies we're going to use for what purposes, because we don't really want to use a firefighter hose to water our garden, right? I mean, there are different, what is it called? There is a technological fit to different problems. So this is something that you always, I think we all of us need to do some soul searching when we are using AI technologies, because we need to really ask ourselves, are the costs and risks for the solutions at par with the problems we are trying to solve? And I think we need to always go back to that question every day, every single day, when we are using advanced technologies to solve problems. And this is something that has been in the agenda for DMV from quite a long time ago. I just want to mention this initiative which DMV joined in 2020 together with Stanford and a group of financial institutions. We were trying to develop tools and processes and guidelines for responsible development of technologies. And that led to a seminar which we held in 2020, because we felt that although the initiative with Stanford was international, we needed to kind of ground it in a national perspective. And we had this conference right before the lockdown, where we invited government, companies, research institutions, basically the whole town came to Björvika, where we discussed different aspects that we need to take into account together in order to solve the issues and the challenges behind responsible AI. And for those who are interested on reading the report that we developed after this seminar, please get in touch with me. I'll be more than happy to provide you with this report. And all the work that we did from 2019 to 2021, actually at the end landed on a sort of an actual operationalization of a risk-based approach on mostly AI innovation processes. And the first step we conducted this year, we developed and conducted assessment on an ethical impact assessment tool for assessing the risks of AI in the conceptualization stage. And this was an extremely insightful experience for us. And I'm very happy to also share our learnings with you. So please reach out. Due to lack of time, I won't be able to go into details, but we want to actually try to move from conceptualization to a more broader corporate level culture, knowledge, and governance. And I'm very proud to tell you today that DMV's sustainable strategy includes a clause where we explicitly talk about artificial intelligence. And it says, DMV is committed to processing and using data and AI in a way that ensures a fair, democratic, and inclusive society. And I can ask you, how many banks or financial institutions have the word AI in their sustainability strategy? I would like to challenge you on that and try to figure out if there's any other banks doing that. And I would like to know, absolutely. And we are developing best practices so that we can account for risks on different stages of the AI life cycle. We are incorporating we're incorporating expectations in the code of conduct, which are connected to responsible usage of AI. And finally, since banks have very regulated models, which actually, in terms of the AI strategy, and the Norwegian AI strategy, basically, the definition of AI is very broad. So it covers almost any sort of decision support systems that are using data in the background. So that basically includes our risk models, our credit models. So our plan is to actually integrate different checkpoints into our model validation processes, but not only that, but our operational risk. So this is ongoing work, and we believe this is extremely important for us in order to be ready for example, the upcoming EU regulation on responsible AI. But enough about DMV. I think today I would like to give an appeal to every AI, data, and tech professional sitting today in the morning watching my presentation. I think that every fraction of a degree matters. This is quote from the United Nations, and we are living in unprecedented times, right? We know that we are going to miss the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. It's very highly likely, but I think that we cannot afford to feel defeated at this point in time, because as someone in the United Nations said, every fraction of a degree matters. We are headed towards 3 degrees Celsius increase from the pre-industrial times, but every fraction of a degree matters. And if you read this result from a study that was published, a journal study, it says for every 1 degree rise in a temperature, 1 billion people would endure insufferable heat. And if you look at it from that perspective, then you can really say, well, if I help out decreasing 1 fraction of a degree, there will be hundreds of thousands or millions of people that can be saved. So just think of that. Stop a second and think about the enormous impact you may have with your work if directed and focused in the right problems to solve. Let's just, we are data people, right? So let's look at data. This is the global greenhouse emissions by sector. You see that energy basically takes the biggest chunk of the energy and the greenhouse gas emissions. So it's like industry, buildings, transport. I think this is a really interesting, exciting area to focus on in terms of using innovative data and technology-based solutions to reduce emissions there. After that is agriculture, like livestock and manure, crop burning, deforestation. And then there's industry, cement and chemicals, and waste, like landfill and wastewater. And if you look at the data, it's kind of interesting because it really helps you to redirect your attention to material things that really have a statistical impact on the emissions. And so, for example, digital and systemic solutions can help transforming lifestyle choices and consumer behavior. And you see here that vehicle efficiency have a big impact in terms of mitigating tons of CO2 per capita. But actually, in fact, if you look at low carbon transport modes or reduced travel distance, you may have potentially a higher impact. It's the same with food. Actually, it's kind of interesting because if you look at the, sort of the potential mitigation impact, then you might try to focus your attention to those. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because you look at efficient household appliances, and we love IoT. We all love IoT. Well, we look at it, at the actual numbers, and we see how little impact it has. So a much better area to focus on is, for example, low carbon energy fuel use. And that is, of course, things as solar panels, alternative energy sources, how to incorporate those into the housing market. Those are the areas we should be looking into. And for example, we can tackle deforestation by focusing on very few key supply chains. And you see here, it's staggering how much Brazilian beef has to do with as a driver for tropical deforestation. And then, so basically, we're thinking of a big chunk of deforestation being connected to soy, to beef, and to paper, right? So, for example, if you look actually at tech platforms and data that can help to form chains of evidence for traceability and accountability, that could be something that could really help on fighting climate change. Of course, there are a lot of possibilities in AI in terms of agriculture in order to create a resilient food system, but I think we really need to be careful there and understand the context well enough in order to develop solutions that work well for particular context and areas. And this is also why it's so important we start working more interdisciplinary, because that's going to be the key. Finally, I want to talk a bit about society. And it's actually quite interesting because a lot of researchers agree that a huge mitigating factor for climate is actually having a stronger focus on the reproductive health, but also health and education in general of girls in developing countries. This is an extremely important factor. It goes hand in hand with environment and governance. And this is also a very, very important aspect that is forgotten many times in the discussions. And I can give you two examples, incredible examples of how artificial intelligence has been able to support this cause. And this is a project that has been done by Stanford, where they're using satellite imagery and AI tools to develop algorithms that can identify, for example, transitory labor camps associated with legal deforestation and charcoal production, and often slave labor that comes from human trafficking. This is amazing, and this is a tremendous progress in terms of how we leverage AI for humanity. And last but not least, there's another case that I would like to talk about, and it's there's a series of podcasts on which is called Hidden Economics of Remarkable Women. And one of the episodes is about a non-profit grassroots organization formed by anthropologists, social workers, psychologists, and different researchers that got together and collected enough data and analyzed it in order to convince the president of Indonesia to ban child marriage, because they actually were able to connect this factor, the child marriage factor, to gross product per capita, to health, national health issues, to different macroeconomical indicators that actually grab the attention of the president and actually convince him to reduce, to increase the age for marriage from 16 to 19. And that has a tremendous impact on the health, well-being, and education of the generations to come. Of course, you need to work locally to enforce these laws. And this is not something that is given, but I think this is a very good start for getting there. I recommend you to look into this podcast. This is a fantastic source for inspiration. Also, there are two other links like data for social developmental sustainability and development goals. And there's another project called drawdown.org, which actually works on integral solutions for the climate. So these are some examples of how AI and sustainability are closely intertwined. And I hope I gave you today some inspiration to work towards these goals. Thank you very much.